What's going on, guys? Good afternoon, and I hope you're doing well for a Saturday afternoon. I know I am here in the eastern portion of the United States, and of course, it is time for Stateside Footy and, of course, the American Hotspur on Stateside Footy. And I decided to call on a friend of the show who is an extremely talented content creator, the one and only Harry Scarfe. Good afternoon, Harry. I hope everything is well with you today.
Oh, good afternoon to you as well. Very, very kind there, the intro. It's very kind of you. You're amazing yourself, and it's fantastic to be here. Talking Tottenham, after last season, never thought I'd be saying this soon that, I'm actually missing them. It's like a love-hate relationship that I feel like it's going to be more of a love one under De Zerbi. I'm so glad that we're back in terms of pre-season. Can't wait for the Premier League season to be underway. Don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed the World Cup as well. Fantastic to be back on. It's been too long, so thank you so much for having me, and big up to the chat and everybody listening around the world, whether it be the US, England, wherever it may be.
Yeah, even if you're in Canada. I'm just playing. I got no hate for Canada. By the way, Harry, I do have to say thank you because I know you're currently on holiday on the south coast of England, and so I do appreciate you taking an hour out of your holiday to jump on the podcast. Yeah, that's awesome of you. And by the way, your summer was absolutely brilliant. I did see that you did a run for autism earlier in the summer, which I thought was absolutely fantastic of you.
Thank you.
Raising awareness, but also raising money for autism. I thought that was an absolute selfless thing you did. So congratulations to you, Harry.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. It's very kind.
Yep, and I gotta say that I'm glad that the World Cup is over. I gotta be honest with you because as an American, it started absolutely fantastic, and everything was going good. The vibes were right, and then all of a sudden, right at the round of 16, it was crash and burn. And then off that, I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready for club football again. We needed that breather after the escape last season, and I think the World Cup gave us that right, nice little flavor. But now that thing is over. As we've gotten into the summer transfer window, I got to be honest with you, man, I am absolutely fired up for the start of this upcoming Premier League campaign.
To be honest with you, I personally enjoyed the World Cup overall, but I think you put it perfectly. I honestly do. I think the Premier League, delighted for it to be back. Always am excited. But this year, just a little bit more than usual. I think there's something really to look forward to under Zerbi, and I think genuinely the club deserve credit to what they've done in the transfer window to date. This is back in a manager, something we don't see a lot of this club, if we've ever seen it before. So I'm loving it. State the obvious, we can still do more, and we must do more, particularly when it comes to the attack. If you said to me, we'd spent 237 million, which is a record. We'd signed, Tonali 100 million, Fernandez 85 million, two top centre backs, Van Hecker, Senesi, Robertson for some depth, for some cover, for some competition for a doggy, Dubravka, experienced goalkeeper, the whole spectacle. I would have been extremely, extremely happy, and I am. We've improved both the defence and midfield drastically in my eyes, particularly midfield this window. And if we do the attack as well, that's unheard of, having a club improving in all three positions, really. And I would say we improve in the goalkeeper positions, because Kinski, for me, if he is number one, we suspect he will be, is an upgrade on Vakari in my eyes. If it's not maybe now, it certainly will be in the future. Man United, just a reminder, under Ineos, just to give them as an example, they do it slightly differently. So, for example, we saw a window or two ago, they brought in Cunha, Bomba and Sesko. That is them just improving the attack in that window. Now we're seeing them improve the midfield with a couple of midfield signings. That's the way they do it. I just don't think we could have afforded to do that. I don't think we could have waited 18 months, for example, or 12 months to improve the midfield or to improve the attack. So I think we're doing very well, and I think that's why we've seen the likes of Aston Villa fans, Newcastle fans, and, by the way, ex-players, pundits, absolutely rattled. They're terrified. Nobody likes it. Nobody likes it. Chelsea won't like us as well after today, because I think we've made statement signings. I think we've had a really good preseason. There's not a lot you can take out of it, though, I must admit, because we last year smashed the preseason. We beat Arsenal, went flat. But I'm loving it at the moment.
I could care less what Chelsea likes, doesn't like. Like that's the thing. It's like I don't know who works in the I don't know who is Chelsea's representative in the FA that was that was able to get them that very kind slap on the wrist when it comes to blatant disregard of rules that govern English football. The fact that I don't care that your ownership group was I don't care. that your ownership group came forward to, essentially snitch on themselves. It doesn't matter. Your club willingly and knowingly engaged in getting over on the rules, and their response was like, "Hey, nothing to see here. These rules don't apply to you." And so, if you have to lose in the preseason the way that you lost in the preseason, as far as I'm concerned, screw it. That's the very least that should happen to your club. I can't stand Chelsea whatsoever. But listen, I got serious beef with Chelsea. So, all right, I think you outlined that absolutely brilliant. The interesting thing about this is that I don't think that the club really could do anything else but back this manager. Because if you remember, in order to get him, they had to pay £60 million in order for him to come in. And they had to concede a lot of power to Roberto De Zerbi as well, too. There was remarks that he probably was going to be heavily involved in transfer windows moving forward. And so from that standpoint, I get the impression that Johan Lang has been somewhat kind of sidelined, maybe even put on gardening leave when it comes to the summer transfer window. But that being said, you hear all these names kicked around, but listen, this was going to happen. Like, you absolutely cannot pay that kind of a money to a coach and concede that type of power and then do what Manchester United does, which is focus on a specific player group. Like, you're going to have to improve, because at the end of the day, he is here to kick this team on. He is here to potentially challenge for honors as soon as this season. And so from that standpoint, there was a lot of evaluation that had to happen, but most importantly, there was a lot of improvement that had to have made. And if that means certain players are out the door, so be it. Work has got to happen fast. And so from that standpoint, I was not surprised that Spurs have moved the way that they have in this offseason.
I totally agree with you, but I think, like, even just if I use my own personal point of view, I have been critical of this, even new look board already, and the owners, particularly in it,
Sure.
The Lewis family. So I think for me personally, I think others may feel the same, but it's not down to me to speak for them. But I feel like I owe it to them to go, not necessarily, oh, I'm wrong, but to go, oh, actually, do you know what? Fair play this summer. You've done your job. Don't get me wrong, this should have come a lot earlier. Mauricio Pochettino, of course, you will know, as US national team manager, called for a rebuild, and he was absolutely right at the time he called for it. He didn't get it. This is the rebuild we're seeing now, and people go, yeah, a lot of bodies went out the door under Ange. You're totally right, but that was a half-hearted rebuild. This is a proper rebuild, right? What will be really telling, if we're doing this in the next window, or the window after, then the window after that, that's a real sign of change. We've seen change now, don't get me wrong, but whether it's going to be long lasting or not, that's the thing. Because we can sign 10 players this summer, great. But if we have a tendency of doing 2 or 3 bad windows where we sign nobody or close to nothing, then don't get me wrong, it doesn't undo what you've done, but you haven't really moved forward. We need to see this every window, in my view, where we're competing for top players. Tonali, whatever other salty clubs and salty fans will try and tell you. For example, Arsenal, we've had it. Oh, we want Vinny Jr. He's never going to come to us. We didn't want him. Tonali, we loved him. We wanted him. Oh, no, because he's gone to Spurs. We pretend it never existed. That's saltiness for you. And they're jealous. Clubs are jealous because they're going, oh, my God, Tottenham have got Fernandes and Tonali that will get into any, in my eyes anyway, most top sides. Let's just agree on that. And then people don't like it. They don't like it. We've been clever. And just because, like Senesi, for example, to zoom in on that, like, if he wasn't for free, he'd be 40 to 45 million pounds. He's a top defender. He's a really good defender. That was always going to join the top 6 club this summer. And if he didn't, he was always going to join the top 6 club at some point. They would have paid the fee. We would have paid the fee for him. I believe that. But again, we just kind of picked up on that opportunity like of Robertson. So people just go to have a conversation with my dad, who's not quite as positive to me. He's like, oh, they're frees. I'm like, yeah, but forget they weren't a free agent, particularly Senesi. Like, that's a top centre-back there that you don't realise. I personally rate him higher than Van Hecker, personally, right now, just to throw that out there. But I'm loving it at the moment. I'm loving it. We need to improve the attack. I'm sure we get onto it. Gakpo's and Savinho's, are they better than what we've got? Yes. Can we do better? Yes. Is it ever so slightly underwhelming? Probably in terms of what's out there.
Yes, and we're going to get on the attack in just one second. But one of the things that I absolutely liked about it, and you mentioned the cleverness behind it, is the business that we're doing, getting players to leave the club, and that is a massive part of the equation as far as PSR is concerned, but also just the way that a big club is supposed to act. And that was one of the biggest surprises of me this summer. Is don't get me wrong, I love Luka Vuskovic, and I actually thought he was going to be the future of the center back position with Spurs. But that being said, moved on. You started seeing Will Langsher move on. You started seeing some of these youth kids that a lot of Spurs fans have put a lot of stock into out, essentially leave the club. And now, of course, we just found out today that looks like Christian Romero is leaving the club. I think the reported fee was awfully low, like somewhere like right around 35 million euros, which is a little bit surprising to me. But that being said, it's like at the end of the day, this team actually had a soft underbelly. And we saw that unfold over the last couple seasons where, for whatever reason, the fight, the heart, the hustle, the whatever is just not there. And so from that standpoint, there were certain guys that are going to have to leave this club. And so for all the, creativity and cleverness that you give this club credit for bringing in certain players, but the back end of this business is what actually has me absolutely fantastic, because we've seen for years this team just hold on to players, not necessarily giving players certain pathways or not even using them. But that being said, it's like you'll sign a guy for 4 years and all of a sudden he doesn't come good. And instead of trying to move him on the very next summer, they'll keep him. And they'll just continue to run down contracts, try to get value, and then either let them go, or if they're very good for whatever the case may be, then we'll just move them on down the road. But that being said, it's like, me personally, I think this was kind of a shrewd summer when it comes to outgoings, and to me, that's what I like most about this, because it signals that this team is actually really trying to operate like the big club that they are.
You put it perfectly. For once, we become like a big club. We're acting like a big club. We're acting like the club we actually are. Tottenham Hotspur, right? To dare is to do. We're selling very well. That's something that I've been hugely frustrated with in the last few years, because although our assets for me aren't, Manchester City's, and not even Arsenal's and not Chelsea's, we've never got what I believe we should have got for some of these players, and we haven't been harsh enough, brutal enough to go sometimes, you know what, okay, you're not good enough for where we want to be. And there's a lot of players that I view, just to use, one or two here, Cario, for example, in terms of, you're not bad, whatever people may say, but you're not what we need if we want to go to that next level. Richarlison, I mean, I'm delighted with him today, don't get me wrong, fantastic goal, and he is picking up goals. But I think that's a difficult thing to do, because you lose his passion, you are losing a few goals, but I don't believe he's good enough to take us to that next level. Some would say that's just stating the obvious, but at the end of the day, he's still here. We're just not harsh enough. I like Ben Davies in terms of the leadership, very experienced, but in reality, a harsh club, a proper club, maybe would have moved him on a long time ago. And this is not an agenda against any of these players. It's just collectively to go, we've been too kind. We haven't been harsh enough, really. Arsenal with Trossard, they're taking a risk. High GA, get rid of him because they know he's not quite what they need. They can do better, and they will bring him better. I'm certain of that for the end of the window. So, really happy to reflect. Sellings have been fantastic, and that's the thing. We spent this money, and people go, how have you done this? How have you done that? That's the beauty of having a new stadium. Finally, we see it kicking in. I remind people that are non-Tottenham fans, that us Tottenham fans have been questioning, where's this money going and what are we doing with it? This is not all of a sudden a big surprise. It's nice to see. It's just long overdue. That's what it is. That's why it feels good, right? This is what we should have seen, or we'd hope we'd have seen 2 or 3 years ago. That's what we were promised moving into the new stadium. Lots of concerts. Reminder, we've had about 2.5 times more events at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this season, last season compared with the season before. 2026 is going to be a fantastic year for Tottenham from a business perspective, it looks like. All those things help. All those things really, really help. Plus the selling. Nobody talks about nearly 100 million that we've got in player sales. Yep. Hugely impressive. Clever deals. Dragusin, loan with an obligation. Sell on clause. Lancashire, did I want to sell him? No. But for 10 million, and and an extra, and then sell on clause.
Yeah, an extra 10 million in add-ons, and then you have a buyback on top of that.
My hats off to the club. They deserve credit. Yep. And I saw something the other day. De Zerbi, was under pressure to deliver. I think we should be incredibly thankful for what De Zerbi done last year. But it's not a criticism of him at all. But of course, he should be under pressure. The club have done their part. De Zerbi done his part last season. The club have done their part. They're on even playing ground, and they're setting him up. They're giving him the tools that we've never really done at this football club. We never give the manager the tools. They often drop the tools or make a mess of it, like being asked to build a house with inferior tools. They don't build the house at all, and it crumbles in front of their very eyes. But we're actually giving a manager the tools this time. And I believe we've got a competent manager. We've got a very good manager. But he's someone that doesn't stick around if you don't give him what you want. So it's a very brave appointment in many respects. It's worked out today.
And like that for him, it's like, if you're not playing this game to win things, then what are you even doing in this game, right? He's one of those type of guys where, I think in the Premier League, which means we probably finish somewhere in the top 10, maybe out of the European spot, but definitely not in a relegation battle. And so that, just looking at that metric from a goal standpoint, that should have been the top priority. Now, I'm not complaining. About the incomings that we've had so far, because
your point is right.
We absolutely had to improve those areas. But the thing about it is, it's like understanding the striker market where it sits right now. 20-goal strikers are just not growing on trees where you can go out and get one, because if a team has one, the last thing they're going to do is want to get rid of them because they can't replace them, right? So from that standpoint, it's like you still have, there's still players out there where if you're smart, maybe you can actually create a 25 goal striker in the aggregate between two different strikers. Maybe you might be able to do that. And potentially hang on to either one of Richarlison or Solanke, whichever one that you feel is good enough to be able to at least get 10 goals from a secondary striker position. Maybe you might be able to pick up a 15-goal striker somewhere in that. But that being said, it almost feels like a letdown when I'm hearing the name Savinho, because I don't care what anybody says. Like, there's a reason why Manchester City haven't played him in 2 seasons. They brought him in from Spain after a very good season down there, and I got the impression that once Pep Guardiola got his hands on him and looked at what his game was, they're like, oh crap, we made a mistake with this guy. And even when they suffered injuries off the left side, he was still the backup to the backup, and he rarely got playing time at City. And now all of a sudden he's supposed to come to Spurs and he's supposed to kick on, and start growing trees. It's like, I don't think so, man. I don't think so. It's like if we spend $65 million on Savinho, we're going to be shopping for another left wing in January. We're going to be shopping for another left wing next summer as well too. Like, me personally, it's one thing to spend money, but it's also another thing to spend money on the right guy that is going to be able to not only play that position well, but also be able to chip in with anywhere between 8 to 12 goals from that left-sided position. And so from that standpoint, it's like, if you're spending 185 million pounds on 2 midfielders, it seems like it's a complete letdown to go after a guy who, quite frankly, is just not good enough for the Premier League.
I take your point. Do you know, I really take your point. And just briefly on that, I think you put that across really well. Let me just add that. I wouldn't reject Savinho or Gakpo, and together I believe they do improve our attack. They're better than what we've got, and together they add, to state the obvious, quality and depth. But you always have to look, when you want to get to the next level, can you do better? That has to be the question. Can you do better? Is there better out there? Those are the 2 questions that go hand in hand. And I believe Omar Mamouche is someone who has a higher ceiling and is very versatile. And the club love this word versatile. I mean, look at Tell, Richarlison. They can play all 3 positions. We had it with Moani. I do worry about players that can play in all these positions, because usually they're not very good at one and they're passed from pillar to post, typically. That's the only worry, to be fair. That's the only way.
But if you're asking me, gun to my head, and you're saying, hey, listen, you have your choice between Matisse Tell on the left or Savinho on the left, I'm taking Matisse Tell, because number one, he knows exactly what Roberto De Zerbi is asking. He knows what Roberto De Zerbi is asking him for as a winger, and he's only going to get better because he's only 20 years old. Savinho's 25, 26. And I hate to say this, but he failed at Manchester City. Failed. And now all of a sudden it's like, and now Manchester City is actually taking the piss out of us, because now they're looking for more money for him. It's like, wait a second. So if you're jacking us around on Savinho, we're not getting Marmouche off you. You know what I mean? It's like this is like, it's the type of situation where it's like, okay, cool. Thanks for letting us know we're going to go look in a different direction. Me personally, I'd rather take Cody Gakpo, because at least you know what you get with. At least you know exactly what you're getting with Gakpo. Yeah, for sure.
I think you're right. With Savinho, I'm not like one of those persons that's hyped, by Savinho. Do I think De Zerbi can unlock a side of his game that we haven't seen, or maybe we've seen it at his best, like PSV with Xavi? I do think De Zerbi can get the most out of him. And Savinho's first year at Man City was meh. It was okay. His second year was really bad. Really bad. Was it 1 goal, 1 assist? It's terrible. And he is City's not only worst attacker, but worst player, in my view anyway, right?
Yeah.
We have to accept that. Again, is he better than what we've got? Yes, I do take your point about Tell, though. I take your point about Tell, though.
No.
I think Tell's ceiling is very, very high, and I think Tell's had an excellent pre-season. And every time you mention that, there's a reaction from the fan base, because the reality is Matthias Tell, I don't know why, and I don't think he should be, but he's Marmite amongst Spurs fans. There's a lot of, he's going to be, this is over-exaggerating, but Messi. Oh, you're just terrible. How are you a professional footballer? There's no middle ground. He's literally the Marmite of the Spurs team, and I don't understand.
Yeah, but a lot of that has to do. A lot of it has to do with the eyes of being on two 17th place teams, right? Where you're looking for somebody to come in and change the fortunes, and you're trying to pin your hopes on a 19, 20-year-old kid that is moving from one level to a higher level, right? And he you're asking too much for somebody where it's like you knew for a fact what you were getting when you're coming in, which is a raw product. And that product has to continue to develop, right? And also we're forgetting, by the way, that he's actually a striker, not a left winger, right? His natural position is to play up top, not off the left. And so now all of a sudden you change his position, and now he has to learn this position, and he has to do it on the job. You know what I mean?
And
it's like context has to be taken into consideration here with Matthias Tell.
But with Gakpo, I agree. And again, it's a bit of a risk in terms of, hit and miss at Liverpool. Is he a left winger? Is he a striker? But I think, again, it's a recurring theme here, by the way, that you can excel as a player. I think under De Zerbi, he's a coach that can unlock a different side of your game, transform your game, improve you dramatically. And I can see a world in which Cody Gakpo not only joins Tottenham, but thrives at Tottenham. In fact, I think that's what will exactly happen, both those things. I think I'm not against it. I'm not against it, and I think he will thrive. Would he be my first option? No. And compared to the hype that a lot of us have been feeling, and, it's not lived up to, if you said to, I think, majority of Spurs fans when De Zerbi on that day used the word Bomba at his press conference, if I said to you that's just Savinho and Gakpo, I think 99% of people would have been disappointed, but would have probably been happier before the transfer window for all this good business was done. So that's just the reality of how you do become maybe a little bit greedy as football fans. But you're right. I still think we have an attacking problem, even if we bring in Savinho and Gakpo. But it's in a better attack. But it's something that still needs to be addressed in January, then again in the summer. Gakpo, if you held me at gunpoint and you said, Harry, choose Savinho or Gakpo, it would be Cody Gakpo. But both of them, again, I look at it and go, I believe that it's not one of Liverpool's better forwards, and Savinho is definitely not one of City's better forwards. They've both got an ability, and they've both got potential to reach a higher level, particularly with Savinho, you hope, because of what we saw last season was disappointing. The only thing that is promising when Xavi comes back, I know it's a long way away, but Xavi and Savinho, of course, playing with each other, clearly have a friendship off the pitch as well, or just a good connection generally. Could that see flourish really? I think Simmons, we've seen really good, strong patches on. I know maybe I'm looking into it a bit too much. We're trying to find positives because we know it's inevitable. It's gone on for so long.
I get it.
But I think I'm personally part of the reason I'm frowning on Savinho is that it's taking so long. It's taking so long, and I just think, why is it taking so long? And when you it's like, if I messed you around, right, you wouldn't want to do business with me. It's as simple as that. You wouldn't be so keen in what you're trying to sell in. I think it's as simple as that. A Gakpo just strikes me when you think about it all of a sudden as a Tottenham player, as a De Zerbi player. Savinho may be a De Zerbi player, but it would feel weird to see him in the Spurs shirt. Of course, you get behind everybody, but we can do better than Savinho. I think Gakpo, people would be happy with generally. Again, we would have thought it'd been better, but Savinho, it might be the new Matthias Tell of the fan base, the new Marmite. I don't understand it. You're right with the points you make with Tell. I still don't understand why he's Marmite. I put out a post this morning. Tell, impressive game once again. He's had an impressive pre-season, and the backlash from that is very surprising. I find I don't buy it to it. I look at it and go, really? People think he was that bad? I don't know if people were in denial or they genuinely feel that way, which they're more than entitled to. Every time I watch Tell, I'm impressed. Do I think he gets things wrong? Of course. Yeah. Do I think he's got like ceiling off the charts where, oh my God, we're going to be unable to attain him? No, but I think he's a decent player there. And I think that when we have our conversation rightly about this poor attack, I think Tell gets labelled in an unfair way. I think Tell is the kind of shining light of a miserable attack. The attack is a dark tunnel and tells you hope of getting out of it if nothing else happens.
Right. And what's interesting about this is, today against Chelsea, when you're watching Matthias Tell, this kid plays with a lot of confidence. I was actually quite impressed with his ability to go 1v1 against his defender. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he made mistakes. Of course he did. He got his back pocket picked a couple times when he was being maybe a little too rambunctious off that left side. But that being said, the confidence to try to dribble between two defenders to try to make something happen. That play in the second half, I was like, oh, I was like, oh, I didn't think he actually had. I didn't actually think he had that in him. Trying to take on two defenders and trying to at least try to get that goal. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, it looks like this. It looks like this young man has grown up a little bit. So I thought the confidence that he was playing within this preseason is something that we didn't necessarily see a lot of last year or the year before. So there's that. But you're absolutely right about Cody Gakpo. The way I look at it is he's played in a lot of big games for Liverpool, played in a lot of big games for the Dutch national team. I think he's won a Champions League with Liverpool. He's won a league title with Liverpool. So as far as I'm concerned, he's a winner. And yeah, he might be 27, 28 years old. So you're kind of getting towards the end of the prime. But that being said, the way that I look at this is you kind of need a high level placeholder for at least 2, possibly 3 years as Matisse Tell and Wilson Odobert continue to develop underneath them. You can even add Mikey Moore to that conversation as well, too, because one of those 3 youngsters are probably going to carry the torch long term at that position. But in the meantime, you want to bring somebody that not only can he score goals, but he also is going to, he's going to deliver those assists as well, too. And Cody Gakpo just seems to have a knack for finding space in the box and scoring goals. Like, his 4-year Liverpool run, I think he's averaged 9 goals a season. And he also has 11 assists. So, I mean, the output is something that, as of right now, the output on the left for this club is 0. And to get somebody that is going to at least, come close to 20 goal contributions, from that side is going to be something you can't necessarily sniff at. Me personally, I don't think Savinho is capable of doing that. So that's just my thought on it. At least you know what you get with Cody Gakpo.
And I'm a positive Spurs fan, and I don't want to be miserable, but I think we need a right winger more, because you hear the words that De Zerbi used. Kudus is weeks away, and Kulusevski, even if he's back in 8-10 weeks, whatever it may be, being match fit and him being out that long, is he ever going to be the same? Swedish national team doctor, seen as the most positive in the Sweden camp, said, I hope he plays football again. That's hardly positive. He's a positive guy. They sent him out to deliver a positive message to give Swedish and Tottenham fans hope. Well, he's hardly done that. And that just tells you need to know. The reality is there might not be ever a Kulusevski again, just as said, a shadow of his former self. We have to prepare for that. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And you have to equip yourself. And I don't believe either in the number 10 or right wing role, when I think about it, are we equipped? Maddison could have another season of injuries. He's picking up a few knocks here and there, which is concerning in pre-season. I just hope it's protection more than anything. But he looks fragile, and that is the worry. Again, becoming club captain, I'm a big advocate in him becoming club captain. But by the same time, Romero's missed 49% of games last season. Maddison missed, not his fault, but 94%. We need a club captain. That's another separate thing that's going to be fit as much as possible. That's very important. That applies to the leadership team. So all of a sudden you have Davis in there, Maddison, that leadership team. Not many of them might not be on the pitch. If Davis isn't going to play, Maddison, if he can't keep himself fit. So that's another thing to think about. But I think a right winger we needed more. And Cody Gakpo, of course, is on that left-hand side. So for me, the priorities in terms of the forward 3, when I think about it, was right wing was the priority. Now I thought about it, probably very, very closely behind or joint striker. Then it's the left wing position. Because I don't know about you, but I wouldn't have a problem with the trust being put in Mikey Moore and or Luca Williams-Barnett. Of course, neither of them should play 38 games or anything close to it at their age, but integrated them right along with Matisse Tell on the left, and even in Maddison, I think we're more than capable of playing that position. I think we could have easily got through to at least January without a left winger. So again, not a complaint that we're doing that, but I just think who's on the right hand side? Are we going to see Tell out of position? Again, we shouldn't see square pegs in round holes, and the manager could be forced into that. As good as we've done in this window, that is the worry. I hope this comment's right about Kulusevski, but okay, even if you are right, Kudus is still weeks away as well. We've got, I don't see him as a right winger either, Kulusevski. If you remember, we got frustrated with him there for different reasons. He was predictable and slow. So he come into that number 10 position. That solves our number 10 problem, but creates an even bigger problem at the right wing position. Either way, we need one or the other, I think, before the end of the window. That's why I think there's been a lot of links all of a sudden to Scott. Could he be that kind of creative player? Gibbs White, unlikely, I'm sure, to happen. So again, we're in a privileged position, aren't we, where we're finding things to moan at because we're not quite in the perfect state. But I never thought that we'd solve every problem in this transfer window. So there's some things that can wait till January. I would have thought left winger could have been that, maybe even a striker, but I don't think right wing can wait till January. Could be wrong.
Well, so here's the thing. I do agree with you about Maddison, right? And this is why, coming into the summer where I said, if Coventry or Leeds came in with a £40 million offer, I would have no choice. I would have no problem moving Maddison along. I just don't like the idea of a guy in his 30s coming back from an ACL injury. It's a lot different than it's a lot different if you're 24, 25, because you haven't really gotten into your prime. And you still have positive years left before you kind of get to that. But if you're at 30, you're on the wrong side of 30, as far as I'm concerned, and your body's a little bit slower. Your reactions are a little bit slower. And from that standpoint, you have no idea if you had no idea if Maddison was ever going to, be able to get back to 100% of the fitness levels that he showed prior to the injury. Not to mention the fact that I'm kind of hit or miss on Maddison, but the reality is you're kind of hoping that in-house right now, like maybe they can split time between Maddison and James Maddison, not James Maddison, but what's his ass? Gallagher, with Gallagher. You can split time with Gallagher, keep Maddison fresh. They can alternate minutes, whatever the case may be, and that kind of holds the fort down until Xavi Simons comes back. Eventually, when that is going to come back, because Xavi Simons, as far as I'm concerned, like I look at him as the future of the number 10 position moving forward.
Agree.
And then what you can use with Conor Gallagher is you can use him in different areas of the midfield if you absolutely need him to. And he can kind of be that Swiss Army knife if you absolutely need him to be that. With Kulusevski, and I think I may have taken a bold approach to this, but I actually do think that not only will Kulusevski return, but by the end of November when he actually regains his form, because it's going to take a while for him to get his form back, right? It's not just about being in match shape. It's about playing matches. It's about kind of getting that rhythm back. And also putting at least a good 5 to 10 matches underneath your belt in order for you to kind of get in the swing of what it is to take, what it takes to be Premier League football. But I actually think that Kulusevski will end up taking that right side away from Mohamed Kudus, because the thing about Kulusevski, what I like about him is not only is he good on the right foot, he's also good on the left foot as well too. He can cut in off the right side with his left foot, or he can attack the end line. Me personally, when he was playing right wing a few years ago, is he what you traditionally want from a right winger or no? But he's still productive enough where I actually think that he takes over from Kudus, because the one thing that Kulusevski does that Kudus doesn't do is he scores goals. And he also chips in and can play balls into the box as well too. It's something that Kudus just does not do well, right? And especially
keep them both fit. That's good couple of options in that right wing position, isn't it? Kulusevski and Kudus. Yeah, it's a big if they can stay fit and perform at their best.
Yeah. And you can pick and choose the opponent in which you want to play it. If you're De Zerbi, you can swap in and swap out. The thing about this is I think you mentioned that right wing was the priority for you. The interesting thing is eventually Kudus was going to come back, and eventually Kulusevski was going to come back. And for as far as I was concerned, it's like the right wing, should it be upgraded considering how we left off last season? It's like, sure, because you have no idea the health long-term with both of those guys. And so if you can bring somebody in to play it right away, fair enough. But that being said, it's like we didn't have a left winger last year. When we were playing a striker in the left wing position last year for a good portion of that second half, especially when Wilson Odegaard goes down, and then all of a sudden it's like
and Gakpo solves his problem. It might just be used in one, but he can factually play as a striker and as a left winger. I reckon he will be the left winger, but again, that's an extra forward option to have, and it means we can move on the likes of Richarlison if we want to. If we don't, fine, we've got more depth, so it's a win-win situation for the club.
Yeah, and I, the interesting thing is the guy that I really want is Saïd El Malla from Cologne, the 20-year-old German international. Dude gets better every single season, whether it was from the youth ranks, getting into the first team, and then from that point on, continuing where he is right now. This dude is unbelievable. This dude is electric. And what's interesting is the comps with a guy like Sonny when he came over from the Bundesliga, and all of a sudden he was unknown, comes to the Premier League and he becomes a star. And it's like, this is the kid that is going to be a star. And it's like, all you have to do is watch 10 minutes of game film on this kid, and you're like, oh, okay. This kid is going to be destined for big clubs in his career. And if you can get him for 50 million euros, then you do it, and you don't even look back. But if you actually told me at the end of the day, where if you try to get Gakpo and you can't get Savinho and you can't get El Malla, and you ended up with Marcus Rashford, I would be perfectly fine with that as well too.
I'd like Rashford as well. To be honest, I do think he stays at United. If I had to guess, I think he'll be a United player
Maybe.
next season under Carrick. That's how I see it, and I see him doing actually very well there. But yeah,
I do too.
absolutely. I personally don't think it happens if
Correct.
Cody Gakpo does happen. I think it's one or the other. And De Zerbi can say 3 signings. That'd be lovely. I personally think that we'll see 2 forwards in the space of the week, and then we'll be waiting until the last week of the transfer window just to see. So yeah, you want them in ideally now in the next 14 days, 10 days
Correct.
ideally, but 14 is being generous because less than 3 weeks now to the Premier League season starts. In fact, 3 weeks pretty much until we play actually, which is the important bit. And you ideally want them to have a tiny bit of pre-season, but at a minimum, a tiny bit of training before the first game. Not essential, but ideal. De Zerbi's very much a manager that likes things sorted early, hence why he moved quickly in the transfer window. If you follow his managerial career, clubs have always done their business early, and he's always apparently, I believe reports, laid down he wants things done early and he wants them for pre-season. I'm sure every manager does. That's important to know. We'll have to see what happens. But Cody Gakpo, do you know what? I can see it working. In fact, the more I think about it, the more I hear about it, I'm invested in it. But I can't pretend that I'm excited to watch Savinho, to be honest with you. But again, can he improve? Of course he can. But I just don't think we can do better. It's as simple as that. That's the way I look at it. There is better. We can do better. We must do better.
So, all right. So when it was funny when Roberto De Zerbi dropped the Bomba, right? And I think he tried to back that a little bit, and he said, "Well, the word Bomba is different in Italian." And it's like, wait a second, I thought a Bomba, I thought a Bomba was universally what everybody thinks of it, right? And so I guess the question is like, is this a, I guess you can say, is this maybe dropping hints that he's bringing the striker in?
I think his aim in the press conference, like he knew what he wanted to do. I put pressure on the club to improve the forward line. Yep. That's what I think his sole purpose was behind it. I actually don't think something's lined up. Because when he was asked about it, he's like, it was close. And then he come out and said that Bomba in Italian means that something big needs to happen. Whereas in English, it means something big is about to happen. So there is a difference there. He's retracted politely, maybe asked by the club. I personally think that we will see an attacking a forward come in. As simple as that, a forward, probably a winger, come in the next 7 days, less than that, probably next 5 days. I think, come Wednesday, Thursday, that we would have signed a player, in my belief, in a forward position. So I think he's just trying to apply pressure. Maybe he's been told that something's close, but he come out with a lot of big things. He was on one, right? Come out, I'm a shark. Last season I told players that, they were going to sink with me, if we went down. So, I'll help you if you help me kind of attitude. He's very clear. If you don't want to be here, I want you gone. If you'd like to stay here, I'd like to keep you. Very crystal clear on that. Said that he agreed all of this with the club before in terms of transfers, laid down in his kind of margins and made it very clear what he wanted. So he's very authoritarian in his press conference. So I think the club are allowing De Zerbi to be him, for it to be De Zerbi FC. But we start badly from now till Christmas, then Mr. Roberto will feel the pressure, and when he has felt the pressure in the past, he bites. It's like he will bite. He'll bite it in the press conference. He'll bite on the training ground. He'll bite, everywhere, and that's fine. But reality is the club have done their job, and it is down to De Zerbi. I don't want to put pressure on him at all, and I don't go into the season expecting necessarily. I think that's not the way I look at it. I hope for European football. I think we should be achieving it with the players we've got, but I'm not going to hold him ransom if we don't achieve that. I think that is a very realistic aim, though, to head towards. So I think we should all be behind De Zerbi, but also recognise the club have done their part. That's important to say. I'm looking forward to seeing the next week or two, because I think there will be business done both in and out the club, and that has to happen, really. We've done really well at this point. But the thing is, I would just say to people, although we want signings to happen early, we've still got about 6 to 7 weeks of the window left, which is incredible if you think about it. We've moved so quickly. Right. And we had the World Cup preseason, so people are like, oh my God, it's like an eternity since we signed the last player. You're right. 2 to 3 weeks, we haven't done anything. There's no need to panic. No need to panic, right? You've still got plenty of time before the transfer window closes. Plenty of time.
I would agree. And the interesting thing is, I'm going to say this right now, that the striker market is not necessarily going to be conducive to bringing in that, I guess you can say, that quote unquote over the top type striker, right? Unless we're prepared, to throw Bayern Munich $100 million to bring back Harry Kane. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be this summer. I do believe Harry is going to come back when his contract comes up, but in the here and now, the striker market really just is not necessarily producing those type of players that you're kind of looking at. It's like, yeah, Vlahovic is a free, but that being said, I've never really been a believer in Vlahovic. When he was at Juve, I just wasn't really that big of a fan of him. And when it comes to guys who are going to be available, I guess the only one that I like is maybe Fernan Torres, who's I believe with Barcelona. But again, you're coming off you're coming off a World Cup where he looked absolutely fantastic. But that being said, I learned long ago that you can't necessarily be all in on 7 games of World Cup football. It doesn't, like, you can't really look at that and translate that over a 38 game schedule. And I think that Flo Balogun is available right now for 55 million euros. But then again, you're asking somebody that's coming from League One into the Premier League, and of course that is a massive gap, and so you have no idea if that's going to translate. And I get the impression that as of right now, it's easier to bring in wingers than it is going to be able to bring in strikers. And I think that possibly is maybe that's 1 or 2 wingers, and then I get the impression
as you
that
said earlier, though, you're right. You said earlier that it's a dead striker market, but it's a very good winger market in terms of a lot of forwards available and for good prices. You're right with that. I totally agree.
And I think that Roberto De Zerbi, like, if it really push comes to shove, and they can't necessarily identify or get that striker through the door, but they can get 2 wingers through the door, that at least for the first half of the season, I think he's going to be perfectly fine with Dominic Solanke and Richarlison starting the season as striker 1, striker 2. That's the impression that I get. I don't know what you feel. But that being said, it's like I just feel like it's going to be easier for this team to get wingers through the door than it is going to be strikers that that are going to literally tilt the field for this club.
Typically in De Zerbi's managerial career, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but I'm thinking purely of his Brighton team, and more recently than that, him at Marseille, the wingers are, I'd argue, more important. And I think they're more important for us as well, away from the manager. You're right, dead striker market. So, I think if you use, common sense, I think you would exploit that winger market that's active, it's alive, it's possible to do business. Doesn't mean you should ignore the striker market. It's just maybe
wait
window. There are 3 options that are decent, don't get me wrong, better than what we've got. But I think De Zerbi will be saying, look, wingers. It's not my opinion, but I think De Zerbi will be happy to go into the season with Dominic Solanke and Richarlison as the strikers. I think he believes Matistel can play there as well. I don't think he'll be like, oh my God, this is the best striker in the league, or best strikers, plural. But I think he'll be content with that. He'll find it okay. I don't think he'll be okay with the wingers we currently got. Hence why I think he was a little bit, I'd call it on one. Maybe not irritable yet. He might become that. Don't get me wrong. But maybe a little bit agitated, but he's more kind of, this is me, this is where I stand. And you just think the money the club has spent, and I'm not criticising De Zerbi, but what we've done in this window, there are 6 signings, and he's still a little bit agitated because we haven't improved the forward line. That's what we're dealing with here in terms of we've got to move quickly and be careful, because we can do all this in the window. If we don't sign anybody in January, De Zerbi's not going to be very happy, and we'll be hearing about it. He doesn't hold back on what he thinks.
Correct.
It's kind of the attitude of Mourinho and Conte in terms of, look, I want to win now, and you need to give me what I want. It's as simple. There's no kind of meet in the middle, right? I think De Zerbi maybe has some more coaching, in terms of he's more admirable with his coaching. I think his football's better. That's why it's not talked about a lot. But De Zerbi, like, if we hadn't have done anything, no signings, he'd straight away walk out. He's that type of guy, right? That is very, I'm all in, I'm not in at all. And I like that in a way, to be fair. But I agree with you, sadly, that I think he'll be happy with Solanke and Richarlison. I don't have the hate that some people do, or dislike.
I don't either.
Maybe a nicer word towards Dominic Solanke in particular.
I don't either.
Think he's more than capable of scoring, 15 to 18 even goals. I think he's more than capable. And I would say to anybody that disagrees, when has he got that quality service? When has he got that quality service? Because you have to have that service. And he hasn't had that. So I think you're making the number 1 striker. You sign competent wingers. Solanke's actually got Fernandes and Tonali who will chip in with goals, by the way, but also provide service for him. Fernandes in particular, 6 pence passes. Kudus and Solanke, by the way, it's a partnership. I'm not talking about front two, but in forward line, it'd be great to see Kudus unbelievable delivery, or can put in unbelievable deliveries. And Solanke is actually a poacher. He's a good finisher. But Solanke is all about his all-round game, Dominic Solanke. He's not just about the finishing. Junior Krupi, better finisher and more natural finisher, crisper, cleaner finisher. But Solanke's all-round game is fantastic. His hold-up plays, into play. That's what manager looks for. He's a workhorse. He works hard. But he's still a good finisher. Bournemouth's game was different. Eddie Howe, he's mainly around the box. But Solanke's game is a little bit different. I feel like he's judged unfairly. If you look at it, his numbers are actually very good. His numbers are very good to a point where he's scoring, every other game, sometimes a little bit more than that at his peak. I think he's been unlucky with injuries, managers chopping and changing, incompetent players in and around him. So I think Solanke, again, I'm not saying he's Erling Haaland. He's not close to it, but I think he's more than capable of filling the gap, even for the short term. I wouldn't have a problem, put it this way, with Solanke being our starting striker. I would Richarlison, as much as I love his passion and he does chip in with goals. I just think he's going to get injured at some point. He's going to get off the rails. Together, they might be okay. Could we do better again? Yes. We probably need better, yes, but it's not disastrous. But as we've spoken about already, wingers, we do need to address the situation. If we go into the season with this attack, it is the worst attack, in my eyes, in the top 8.
I would agree with that. The interesting thing about Dominic Solanke is 2 years ago in his debut campaign with Tottenham, in an up-and-down season, he still scored 15 goals. Last year, he was injured for 3/4 of the season and really just never got going when he came back. Outside of the Scorpion goal, I think it was against City in the second half. That kind of was the high bar level. But all around, that's the thing. It's like I look at his game and I'm like, yeah, if the excuse is that he just doesn't have service, well, now all of a sudden there's going to be an argument to say that not only does he have service this year, he actually has next level service. So from that standpoint, if the left wing gets improved, a lot, that's only going to make it that's going to make it better. And when you look at a guy like Richarlison, even in a part-time role for his last season here at Spurs, if he continues to hold the trend, last year was 11 goals. If he can hold that anywhere between 10 to 14 goal as a backup, now all of a sudden you have 29, 30 goals right there. And you've just recreated a 20 to 25 goal striker in the aggregate. And for a club that right now can't necessarily identify who's going to be that guy who's going to replace Harry Kane, because quite frankly, we still haven't replaced Harry Kane. And there's a good chance that we'll replace Harry Kane with Harry Kane, by the way.
And on that, if you don't mind me just chipping in, there's so unfair comparisons to Harry Kane.
Yeah,
Solanke's compared to Harry Kane. Richarlison's compared to Harry Kane. Lancashire was compared to Harry Kane. Scarlett, Parrott before that. It's not fair. I think we have to accept, and I like our youth academy, and I think we've got some talent in there. Let's be clear: Luca Williams-Barnett, Mikey Moore, Wan Byfield, Olasesi, just to name 3 or 4 of them. However, Kane was for me a once in a lifetime, a generational striker that come through our academy. We were so lucky to have him. Credit to everybody, of course, that developed and helped him on his journey, but we were incredibly lucky. None of these are going to be a Harry Kane, and it's unfair when you're replacing Kane or when you're compared to Kane. That's just not fair. So I think we have to stop this, I think, toxic and inhumane comparison, really, to Harry Kane. It's not fair. Solanke's numbers are good. They're not Harry Kane, but I'd challenge you to find a Harry Kane out there. The closest to that is Erling Haaland. Then there's a massive, massive gap, right? Huge gap that goes right down. Kane and Haaland are way above everybody else. We're not having either of them. It's as simple as that. So Dominic Solanke, I'm not saying he's the next best in line, but I think he's got real potential to be scoring. Even you said there, 15 goals, and that was a poor season for the club, really. And, it wasn't his best either. He can easily get 20 goals this season. I'm very confident in that. If he can keep himself fit and the team can excel as I predict them to do, I think we need to put our trust in Dominic Solanke and address other issues such as the winger positions.
Lastly, Harry, I know that you have to take off in a minute. What would be a good first season for Roberto De Zerbi?
Good first season under Roberto De Zerbi would be getting back into European football. If nothing changes in the transfer window, if we see improvement to the attack, which we need desperately, I think at this point, I'm not saying that we can't live without it, but I think it's much needed, which you've expressed in this podcast. However, if we do bring in the right players, I think Champions League football all of a sudden becomes a realistic aim, to be honest with you. But in terms of what I think, I'm bearing in mind, just put this out there, I'm a more positive Spurs fan. I recognise youth is a big part of that. I actually think we're going to have a really good season, and you're going to laugh at this, I'm sure. But I think we actually finish 3rd in the Premier League, and I think we'll win the FA Cup, because I predict we'll sign 3 more players, and I think it actually will be, to some people's surprise, Marmoush, Gakpo, and Savinho. I think we'll sign all three. I don't know why. I'm very confident, but to make it clear, I do think a lot of players will leave the club. I think we'll still see 5 or 6 more leave. So when you look at it, it's not going to be too much more spent compared to what we've got in from this point onwards. But again, I recognise that I'm extremely positive. It's not me saying we have to finish third, but I think we will finish third and win the FA Cup if I had to predict. It's not what I expect. I can't stress enough, because I know what people like, they clip it out of context. Harry expects this. He does not expect this. I think European football should be that expectation, yes. But I think we can, if we get it right from now to the end of the transfer window, and the start of the season from now until Christmas and just before that, particularly now to the first international break, is very telling. I think, in fact, I'm certain that next time I'll be, hopefully talking to you further down the season, hopefully will be when, we're looking good, we're in these Champions League conversations. That's where this club should be. This beautiful and fantastic football club with the best fans in the world deserves to be in the Champions League. We can do it. We will do it under De Zerbi. And I think we're going to do it, finish third and win the FA Cup. I recognise that's bold. Again, I'll state one more time. This is not an expectation from me, but it's me, before the season got underway, being hopeful. That's the absolute best I think that we can get. And I like this manager. I back this manager. The club upstairs deserve credit. Fans stay before, home and away, particularly away, fantastic. It's going to be a great year. I think a memorable year. I hope.
Excellent, man. Excellent. I'm kind of on the same wavelength with you. I here's the thing. If we ended up with Omar Mamouche and Cody Gakpo, I would be over the moon. That would be ideal, an ideal way to end the transfer window. I'm still not sold on Savinho, but if you bring him in as a backup, okay, fine, whatever. But the interesting thing is, I do believe that with the additions that this team not only can finish in the top 10, but can also finish in a European spot. Now, whether that's Europa League, whether that is the Conference League, whatever the case may be, I think that is very doable. I like the fact that we enhanced our defense and we enhanced our midfield to the point where there's just absolutely no more excuses. Now, all of this is just a caveat to say that this team absolutely has to stay healthy. We cannot endure another season with an injury crisis where we lose 11 first-team players because it's literally sunk the last 2 seasons, right? So from that standpoint, I always look at this as, if we can stay relatively healthy, we have the talent in order to get a European place. That's number one. Number two, it's also winning a cup. Whether that's the Carabao Cup, whether that's the FA Cup, to me, it doesn't necessarily matter. As long as you get to Wembley and you get over that hump, I would probably assume that would be a great first season under Roberto De Zerbi. It kicks off the rebuild in a positive way, but it also sets the stage for your next summer as well too, where you can take that next step in the summer transfer window and actually bring in the upper echelon, the upper caliber of players that is going to take you from a Europa League to the Champions League, but also puts you in a position where you can actually challenge for top honors. Me personally, I think this is going to align for year 2 when we actually win the Premier League. I actually do believe that in the 3 years that Roberto De Zerbi will be here, I think he'll be here for 3, that we will win the Premier League in one of those years.
I agree. And, I'm going to not only echo that and totally agree. I think we're going to win it, not this upcoming season, but the season after. And I'm absolutely convinced about that. I know we're getting carried away, right? This is typical Spurs, typical football clubs, but I think generally we've got the manager now that we've been crying out for, and we've got the backing that we've been crying out for. And 2 and 2, when they come together, they're a beautiful combination.
Well, I mean, think about this way. In terms of finances, we have been at a 42% wage to revenue turnover for years. Daniel Levy kept us at that number. There was championship clubs that actually spent higher as far as revenue to wage turnover, right? And we did that for so long that we were never ever really in a position to come up against PSR. Good teams will spend about 65 to 70% of their revenue to wage, right? Like if you're in that 65 to 70, you're kind of up in that top 3. Spurs right now, even with the incomings, they're probably up to 47, 48. They can still do another 12% on that, between now and the end of next summer's transfer window to actually get those upper echelon type of players that actually kind of put us in that 60% range. And that's why I personally believe that we're going to win the Premier League, not this year, but next year. Yeah, I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, we're always optimistic for a new season starts. This just feel a little bit different, and I'm sure this has been before. But I genuinely think this time's different.
Well, I mean, in your tenure of being a Spurs fan, when have you ever seen a summer like this?
I haven't. This is the most excited I've ever been, and I'm always positive. But this year I'm going, do you know what? Genuinely, usually it's just about, the manager. What could we do under Mourinho? What could we do under Conte? But I've never looked at the transfer window and gone, they believe in him or they backed him. It's different now. We've got a manager that I feel the same about. And we've backed. I think we're in a fantastic position on and off the pitch. I genuinely believe the club has changed upstairs. I'm really excited. And I think anything's possible. At the same time, I don't expect necessarily too much, but it's the fact I'm hopeful what could happen if we're patient and if it goes right.
I agree. All right, Harry, that's going to do it for us. What's coming up on Scarfe Talk Spurs? Excuse me, Scarfe Spurs Talk.
You got it. You done better than most people anyway. You done better than most people. Honestly, a pleasure to talk to you. Really is. Thank you so much for having me. Anytime you need a guest, just give me a shout, and you're always welcome on Scarfe Spurs. So, big up to chat. I think they're amazing. I think Tottenham have incredible support, over in the US in all different parts as well. I love that comment. Spurs winning.
I love it. Yeah, we are winning.
I love it.
We are winning the treble. We are winning the treble.
Absolutely. But no, just briefly, Scarfe Spurs is doing really, really well at the moment. We delivered live updates from Sydney, Australia today from members of the team that actually went out there reporting on the game, interviewing fans, and providing live coverage videos. So, that for me is real growth of the podcast. Now writing articles on Substack news page also. So going from strength to strength. And, I'm not very good at reflecting on things. When I do sit down and reflect on it, I probably will at the end of the day and go, do you know what? That's a big milestone today. And coming on here, opportunities like this, very, very grateful for. And I'd love it. And honestly, it looked like I'm on holiday, right? And I'm doing it. And that just tells you how much that I love it. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I'll never say no. So thank you so much. And big up to the Spurs community around the world, in the US. We see you. We appreciate you. Thank you for supporting this club.
Absolutely. And do me a favor, please make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast as this thing is inching upwards. And I do appreciate the support that you guys do show the channel. So please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and also head over to Harry's channel at Scarfe Spurs Talk, and make sure you show Harry some love as well too. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Thank you once again, Harry, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your holiday out there on the South Coast.
Thanks so much.
And I hope the rest of you guys enjoy your weekend. Take care, guys.